Okay, speaking with Glenn Pennyfather, a man who's played and been assistant manager for Canvey and is now back at the club in the capacity of looking after our new academy. Glenn, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Glenn. Yeah, all good. Obviously excited about the new venture and a new partnership with the club. It feels good to be back involved with the club again, to be fair.
Sure, it's been quite a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Been too long, some would say.
Good. Well, it's great to have you back, and I'm sure your experience in the game is going to be of a huge benefit to the club and to the young people that you're kind of overseeing in the academy. I mean, looking at yourself for a minute and talking about young players, you started out at Southend at 14 and then made quite an impact. I think you were probably the youngest player at the time to come through into the Southend team. Is that right?
Yeah, it was at the time. I was extremely lucky. I mean, I started at Southend, as you rightly say, at 14 years of age, and ended up signing an apprenticeship, which weren't given out as easily as they seem to be given out nowadays at the age of 16, because obviously clubs needed to be careful, especially clubs like Southend, whose resources wasn't that great in regards to finances. So, they had to kind of cherry pick the people they wanted, and I was lucky enough to really have a great start at Southend with my coach Frankie Banks, who was instrumental in my career, certainly in my early days. And yeah, you're rightly you said, Glenn, I started in the first team at 17 years of age, so that's fantastic, and obviously I can talk about that with the young lads that we're trying to develop now for the club.
Sure. And you mentioned briefly about the apprenticeships, and maybe they're given out a little bit more freely these days. I'm sure there's a lot of differences between the kind of a youth setup that you came through and the youth setup that a lot of young players will come through now. But what do you think are the main differences from your time and what you see today?
Well, it's remarkable. The difference nowadays is incredible, really. I remember when I first signed as an apprentice, you had to initiation. That certainly wouldn't happen nowadays. Certainly initiations happen. We won't go into that too much, but you had to show that amount of respect to the first team. I remember having to knock on the first team door when I was first an apprentice. You couldn't just bowl around and feel like you'd already made it as such as a footballer. You had to earn your stripes, and it was that respect thing. You had loads of jobs to do. I mean, when the senior players had the summer off, like in a normal season that would be coming up now, you was in all the time. You was painting everything, you was cleaning everything. All those jobs were apprentice jobs, whether it was the kit, the boots, the ground, sweeping the terrace. Anybody remembers the old South Bank at Southend? That was a hell of a terrace to sweep. So yeah, I mean, none of those jobs that the apprentices do now. They come in and they sort of do their work, and they work on their development work, hopefully work on their education as well. And things have changed somewhat from my day, that's for sure.
Sure. And as you say, so you broke into the Southend time. You went on to play over 250 times for Southend, going on to play for the likes of Crystal Palace, Ipswich, Bristol City. How do you look back on your time with these clubs?
Yeah, I mean, Southend was fantastic for me. From early age, I was there, as I say, from 14 years of age. I think I left at 25. So I had a long time at the football club, and I owe them a hell of a lot. Obviously, looking back in retrospect, I'd have loved my move to have came quicker, a little bit younger, where I may well have made my stamp a little bit more. But I can't complain. I had a fantastic career. I was a lucky boy. I played for some super clubs, Crystal Palace, managing to get promotion to the first division, as was then, through the playoffs, beating Blackburn. I was involved in that, and then going to another great club, Ipswich Town, and winning what is the Championship now, and going into the Premiership with those. So I was very lucky, and I ended up at Bristol City, which again is another great club steeped with tradition, and I had a super time there. I mean, to be honest, my career after Southend, was blighted with injury. I had 3 or 4 major injuries in that time, which curtailed, quite a few appearances, which was disappointing. So I wasn't really, able to stamp my mark as much as I would have liked to. But I can't look back on that. Many players don't have those sort of careers and don't, might get a really bad injury which finishes them. So I can't complain. As I say, I had a fantastic time at all those clubs for different reasons.
One match in particular that I'm just looking at the lineup now that you played against, the likes of Ian Rush, John Barnes, Jamie Redknapp, Steve McManaman. You came in as a sub for Bristol City in a 1-0 win away to Liverpool in the FA Cup. That must have been some match to be a part of.
Yeah, it was an incredible time, and that was the place to play. I've been asked that question many a time. Where's the best ground to play at? And it was always Anfield for me. The atmosphere there is absolutely incredible. and they're fair fans. That was the thing, you know. I remember them staying behind and clapping us off the pitch, you know, and it was a fantastic evening. You know, we'd won 1-0 with Brian Tinian's goal on. As you rightly say, I came on as sub in that game and had an opportunity to score myself. I think it's on the highlight somewhere where, you know, I think I hit it into the side netting. I'm coming in from the right-hand side with Rob Ballard beat, and I think I hit the side netting, I think, or he made a save. I can't remember. Let's say he made a save. It sounds better for me. Yeah, incredible times, you know, and incredible moments. And I had a number of them over the years. And I was very lucky, you know, with my promotions with Southend and Crystal Palace, and then with Ipswich as well. So I did enjoy some incredible moments.
As you say, so you retired as a professional, I think it was about the age of 31. And by the sound of it, you've kind of really taken the positives out of something that a lot of people might have looked at as quite a disappointment. I'm sure it was a disappointment as well, but I think you've been able to recognise what a great career you had. But you did carry on playing, of course, and Canvey were a team to benefit from that. What made you decide that Canvey was a good place for you to kind of carry on playing in a part-time capacity?
Well, to be honest, when I come out, I wasn't, you know, I'd retired through injury. I'd had a couple of ankle operations at Bristol City. So, you know, I decided, you know, now was the time. I didn't think I could still compete at that level with the injury that I had. You know, I was finding it difficult to sustain really the intensity that I wanted to, the way I played. I couldn't maintain that during that time. So I decided to retire. And the first person that rang me was Dave Cusack, who was obviously I'd known very well from my time at Southend, and he was the Dagenham manager at the time. And, you know, I'd kind of, you know, verbally agreed something with Dave to go over to Dagenham. And then I was at a party on a Saturday evening, and I was friends with somebody at Billy Hill, and Billy Hill was there, and Billy spoke to me, and you know, and I hadn't really spoken to Billy Hill a lot during my time, and you know, and he obviously I went on to know him very, very well, but you know, he just mentioned, oh, Canvey, I'd love to have you over there, blah blah blah. Next minute, I know I'm getting a phone call from Jeff, and you know, I spoke to Jeff about the deal that Dagenham offered me, and you know, he offered me the same sort of deal, and it was just round the corner. So, you know, he spoke to me about what he wanted to achieve and his ambitions, and where he wanted to take the club, and that kind of sold it for me. And you know, I was obviously looking back on it in retrospect, I made the absolute right decision, and partnering up with Jeff, firstly in my playing days, and then in my my coaching days and management days, it was fantastic. It was probably the best decision I made in football.
And you mentioned Jeff, and it's something that always certainly interested me as a supporter at the time, was the dynamic between yourself and Jeff. Who was responsible for how that was divvied up, and also was coaching something that you were preparing for as you were coming towards the end of your playing days, especially with injuries becoming more and more part of things?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I was always coaching during that time. I'd always kind of coach, especially the young lads doing the soccer schools and the summer camps, etc. So I kind of was gearing towards that, and I was doing a bit with John Batch as well at the time, because John was running the youth teams, and I remember doing his side first and then sort of expanding on that. And I was really struggling. So at the time at Crystal Palace, I'd chipped 2 bits of bone off the head of my femur, and I knew it was going to be a matter of time before arthritis really set in, and I would need a replacement. And that came around quicker than I thought. The pain, you know, I was playing games for Canvey, and you know, I couldn't sleep for 2 days. It was literally that bad. You know, I've
seen some Canvey games where I couldn't sleep for 2 days afterwards either.
Yeah, for a completely different reason. But you know, it was just agony, and I knew I had to retire. And Jeff pulled me one day, and he said, "Listen, I'd rather see you finish, you know, as the footballer everybody's going to remember, who had that career, rather than that old bloke hobbling around trying to still do it." And he was absolutely right, and that made my mind up, and I retired completely from football. And then Jeff, Paul DeLay was obviously first team coach at the time. Jeff decided you know, the club probably needed a change, and he offered me the job. And we'd got on so well from day one, Jeff and myself, in regards to football and how we wanted to play it. You know, what we expected, where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do. We wanted the best for the football club. We wanted to try and sign the best players, and we wanted to take Canvey Football Club as far as possible, you know. And from that, we were singing from the same hymn sheet, so it was a no-brainer for me. And that's obviously where my coaching career started.
Sure. I mean, certainly, again, at the time, this could have been a misconception of how I thought things were maybe going at the time. But it seemed to me, obviously, we were getting a lot of players from Southend, from Ipswich Town. Were you involved in kind of your connection with those clubs? Was that quite pivotal in bringing in those players?
Yeah, I think at the time when you're fresh out of football, then you do have lots of connections. You have lots of ins, and you know, you can kind of ring all your mates up and find out exactly what's going on with who. You know, is anybody going to be available? Is anybody going to be released? And you kind of get the heads up on anybody, you know, and you get in front of anybody else who's looking at those sort of players. So yeah, I think my connections at that time were instrumental, certainly, in bringing some of those players to the football club.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you know, they've still got to want to come. I mean, that was one of our stock sort of sayings when we sign players. Don't come here because, you know, you're getting £5 more than you're getting from up the road. You know, come here because you want to come and play for us. That's the most important thing that Jeff and myself thought. That, you know, you've got to want to come and play for this football club. It's got to mean that to you. It's got to mean as much to you as it does to us. And that was our philosophy, really. And you know, we were lucky. I mean, we had some fantastic players at that football club during that time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it certainly spurned success, as you say. So I think you definitely brought the right ones in, that's for sure. A big question now. If I could take you back and you could mention one match, if there's one match that stands out from your time as a player or assistant manager at Canvey, what is that match?
You can't go any more on the trophy final. I know it's a cliche, and you know, I'd love to come up with something different, because we did have some memorable games. Obviously, the FA Cup runs, etc., and the county cup wins, and the promotional games where we were champions or we got promoted. I remember one memorable game. You know, I think it was Whittam in the Essex Thames side, and I think I played in that game. I think we beat Whittam at home. It was a really hot day. And we scored some fantastic goals. I think Tony Mahoney played on that day as well, and we scored some really, really good goals. I think I got a hat trick that day. I think that's why I remember it so well. I think we ended up winning 5 or 6, and I did have it on video somewhere, but I don't know. It's going to be around somewhere. But I remember, certainly remember that clearly. But the FA Trophy day was just the pinnacle for the club. I mean, it was amazing, really. I mean, the Holy Grail was always trying to get into the conference, but Jeff and myself, after, you know, Jeff missing out on the Vase in the years before I arrived, and then us pitting our wits in that FA Trophy against clubs, obviously status-wise much higher than us, with arguably better resources than us, much more experience. You know, for us to reach that and beat some real tough sides along the way, and play some fantastic football. You know, the only disappointment out of all of that was obviously the Hensford game, but that game against Forest Green Rovers when we won 1-0 was incredible. And obviously I speak to Ben Chenery regularly. I mean, me and Ben have stayed really good mates, and he was with me at Chelmsford as well. Ben will always say, whoever we sees him, and I'm sure you've heard him say it, Glenn, I'll give you the best day of your life. He's not a winner. But what a day for everybody, not only the players and the staff, but the fans that travelled on that day, and the ones at home as well. It was absolutely amazing for a football club, from where Canvey Island started, where Jeff started, that dream of lifting that football club to as high as he possibly could, to winning that national trophy at Villa Park was incredible.
It was, yeah, certainly. I mean, even 20 years on to this day, people are still talking about it. It's, yeah, one of those ones that anyone that was there was
Ben Chenery, the main one.
You then moved with Jeff over to Chelmsford. And you then took over as assistant manager. You then took over as manager outright. Was that something that you'd wanted, to be manager, and to kind of have everything fall on your shoulders? And how do you look back at your time at Melbourne Park overall?
The answer to the first one was no, because I've just thought Jeff and myself had such great chemistry, and we worked so well together. We really did. I mean, we bounced off each other. Each knew each other's role. We knew what was expected of each other. We both had each other's utmost respect, and that was the important thing. But I just didn't think it was Jeff's club. When Jeff went there, you know, we took a number of players with us, and it just wasn't Jeff's club. You know, Canvey Island Football Club was Jeff's club. And he spent the first year, and we ended up getting promotion out of that Ryman Prem, as it was at the time, into the Conference South, how it's reformed. And Jeff just come up to me and he just said, you know, Glenn, he said, I've had enough. He said, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not enjoying it. And once that enjoyment goes out, that's the main thing. If you're not enjoying it, then there's no real point. If you're not enjoying coming to training, coming to games, enjoying the football, enjoying the highs, and as well as, you know, obviously some lows that you have, but mainly highs when we was with each other at that time.
Yep.
And I just think, you know, Jeff had enough, and I thought in retrospect, looking back, I think if I was honest, I think Jeff moved because he was coming out of Canvey, he moved to Chelmsford to make sure there was a number of people at Canvey Island Football Club that moved with him were okay. And, you know, he said, I'm going to make sure you're in charge if you want it. And, you know, I just felt that we'd started something, especially with the players, that I wanted to continue. And I did that. I did that for another 5 years with success each year. In the end, it wasn't quite enough. We couldn't quite get over the line. I think playoffs 4 times out of those 5 years.
Yeah, definitely.
It was, you know, it was heartbreaking, really. There's lots of reasons behind that I won't go into at the moment, but there were a number of reasons why things didn't transpire how I wanted them to. You know, there was a lot of speculation at the time of what was happening at the football club, and it was disappointing, you know, because I'd assembled a real strong set of players, young, hungry players that really wanted it.
Well, I think certainly in hindsight, I think your tenure at the club was extremely successful. I think the club has obviously always been at that kind of top half of the league, but I think, as you say, playoffs 4 years out of 5. Okay, didn't quite get the promotion you wanted, but certainly the club hasn't really pushed on from that point in terms of getting that all-important promotion.
No, they haven't. And in that time, I think, you know, we carried on that legacy of doing well in the FA Cup. You know, I think 3 years in a row, I think there wasn't too many non-league sides that made the second round of the FA Cup 3 years in a row and brought the sort of revenues into the football club that we did at that time. You know, and beating Colchester, which was, you know, probably one of the best days at Chelmsford City, certainly at Melbourne Park. You know, that was a momentous day as well, you know, for beating the local rivals up the road. That was fantastic. But for differing reasons, you know, as I said, we just couldn't get it over the line, and I desperately wanted to get it there because, you know, they have got a really fantastic fan base and they deserve better. And it's, you know, it's disappointing, but sometimes, you know, politics play a part in football and you move on.
Indeed. A move on you have, and back to Canvey. So it's great to have you back part of the club, overseeing the academy along with the in the partnership with A1 Academy Sports. Obviously, a system that's already produced Kane Gilbert that Canvey fans will be well aware of. So hopefully more of the same to come in the future. What will your role be on a day-to-day basis as part of both as part of Canvey, but also as part of A1 Academy? Yeah,
so basically I lecture as well as coach. So, you know, there'll be a couple of other lads with me as well coaching. And I've got another lecturer as well, Mike Freed, who will lecture the older group. But basically what our day-to-day sort of roles are, that the education is obviously the most important thing, because it is an education stroke football program, and they will follow a BTEC sport involving sporting excellence and performance. Now, the great thing for this year that the program has changed, so it is going to make them employable, where a BTEC before wasn't. It just gives you that leg up, if you like, on UCAS points into university. The actual course that they're following this time will make them employable once they've finished that 2-year course. So they'll be working on things like gym instructing, personal training, etc., and things like that, as I say. So once they finish that course as 18 years of age, then they'll be able to go out and earn money straight away. They won't have to go then into higher education. So, you know, it's a fantastic opportunity for young lads. I mean, you know, if you miss out on an academy, if you're good enough to go to an academy, great. But we know there's a high percentage of good footballers that miss out getting that opportunity. You know, and it's a way of giving people a second chance and a realistic pathway into senior football. You know, I've been working as you know for West Ham for the last 3 years, and in all honesty, that is not a realistic pathway for the boys, because in those 3 years, you know, we've not had one really even go up on trial. We've had one lad go to Colchester United on trial, Jaden Randall, who's you might have picked up with Haybridge Swifts. Jaden went to Colchester, and then obviously we've had one or two lads that people have looked at. Orient looked at Brandon Wood, who I think Benfleet might have had in there for a couple of games, another good player. But they weren't realistic opportunities for those boys, you know, and the realism is, you know, the percentage of boys that actually don't get into academy, get back into football is negligible. You know, it's
Sure.
really a real low percentage. So all we're trying to do for these boys is give them that second chance, pick them up, get them to realise, you know, that they'll get out what they put in through hard work and dedication. If they've got that ability and they develop, and we know people develop at different stages, you know, and they tend to get where they're going to end up at different times. It doesn't all come together at 16, 17 years of age. You know, you get that time to develop. And if that happens and you work hard and you're focused and you're dedicated, we can open doors for you and we can give you opportunities at football clubs like Canvey Island, where you can play senior football and really put yourself into the spotlight.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the important things, because when you're 16 years of age and you've been at a football club from, you know, maybe 7, 8 years of age, and suddenly you get told via a text or via a WhatsApp or via an email, sorry, you're not good enough. You know, that's mentally, that is scarring, you know, and there's so many of them young players all around the country that receive that information. It is very, very difficult to pick yourself up. People don't know where they're going to go. They haven't really got a plan B. You know, they're not expecting it. They think they're going to get taken on. And suddenly they need picking up from somewhere. You know, parents are obviously very, very disappointed. You know, they might not know where to turn. So we're that opportunity. We're one of many. And we know this sort of program is saturated around our area. You know, there's lots of these different programs. But what we're giving them something different is the fact that we're giving them that experience, that coaching, that know-how, not only in the education side, but the development of that football side. And that's something we're desperate to give these young players. And if we can start feeding players through, like the likes of Kane Gilbert, who you mentioned earlier, who was absolutely brilliant for me for 2 years. He really was. I mean, he got man of the match in the National Cup final against Chelsea a couple of years ago. He got the winning goal, and he's reaped the rewards of that. He was at Halstead Town. And I spoke to John about him, and I said, look, John, I mean, he's with me now. I said, if he's a good player, he's going to go places. And lo and behold, you know, John made some inquiries, and he's at Canvey, and I'm delighted with that. Absolutely delighted, because he's a young lad that's come out of our program, and he's showing that, you know, if you do work hard and you do put your mind to it and you're focused, you know, those opportunities will come along. And who knows, Kane might go again. We don't know. Or Kane might have reached his level. We really don't know. But what we've done, we've opened that door for him. And once you open that door, it's down to those young players to walk through it and develop again. And that's what we're trying to do. You know, we've had great success for 3 years. You know, personally, we've had good success in winning national leagues, winning national cups. But now we want to take it to a different sort of area. We want to help, obviously, clubs like Canvey to produce these young players. And hopefully we can get, it might not be this year, it might not be next year, Glenn, but it might be the third year where you get those players that are developing and progressing, and they come through. You know, they've got the option of the opportunity to come through via Benfleet as well, which obviously gives you senior football then into Canvey's first team. And if we can do that, if we can manage that, I'll be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Sounds great. And I mean, you mentioned that there's a lot of these kind of academies around. But I think one thing that you're quite sort of fairly uniquely positioned in for yourself personally is the experience that you bring to the table. Obviously, you will have seen, as much as you did extremely well and you were able to make the grade at Southend, I'm sure you would have seen countless others who didn't. You'll have also seen that through your coaching, etc. And I think also being somebody that did have their career cut back through injury, that could have obviously happened at different stages in your career. Okay, you managed to have a lengthy career, but I think that preparing people for that next level and obviously appreciating that the vast majority of people that lace up a pair of football boots are not going to be professional footballers, but that doesn't have to be the be all and end all. There can be other careers, and there can be still ways of playing and enjoying the game while still earning money in sport, ideally.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, it's, you know, when young players are at academies and they're developing through those clubs' academies, you know, I think it's probably a little bit better now, but, you know, when we was at Canvey, they never really dealt with the mental side of things, how it affects people mentally. You know, if you've got a young footballer and, you know, they're not playing particularly well and they might have had a niggly injury and the manager's moaning at them and you might have a few supporters on the sideline moaning at them, and all this affects you. It affects your game, but it affects you mentally. Maybe not physically, but mentally it affects you. And they don't know how to deal with that. You know, so we're going to have that knowledge. We're going to have that experience to be able to do that. If you remember back, I mean, at the time when we was at Canvey, we signed John Kennedy, Neil Midgley, Dave Theobald, 3 young lads from Ipswich Town who were all earmarked to do great things. And it didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't happen for them, but they came to our football club and they were absolutely fantastic, all 3 of them for us. You know, and John Kennedy's still playing now, isn't he, as far as I know?
He is, yeah, pretty much. I'm pretty sure he still gets out there. And I think Neil and Dave are at Cambridge City, I believe, in the coaching staff there. So
you've still got to have that mental strength to be able to get over that barrier, clear that barrier, get your mindset again and go again at a different level. And those boys did, and you know, you'd find it hard beat to find somebody at his prime better than John Kennedy as a right wing back.
Absolutely.
You know, it is a difficult situation, but as I said, this is something we can help boys with. You know, if they haven't made it at academies and they are now, you know, where's my next pathway? Where's my next realistic pathway?
Yep.
Because a lot of them then already they're thinking, well, I'll go and trial for this club, that club, that club. Well, they have so many of those trialists, and again, you're back to, you know, you're going to be very, very lucky if clubs pick you up from that. But this is a realistic pathway to get them back focused mentally, back to doing what they do, and back to developing them as young men and young footballers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. The realism, as you say, I think staying realistic, and I think obviously yourself can bring that to the table and make sure that stays front of mind, because I think there's probably lots of people selling a dream that is never going to become a reality. So I think keeping things realistic will be best for everybody in that aspect. Yeah. I think another thing, just very finally, I just want to talk about yourself as a coach. I think another thing that you are going to bring to the table, obviously, is that you will have worked under some excellent coaches amongst the clubs that you've been at. You've already talked about Frankie Banks when you were at Southend initially. When you look back on the coaches that you've worked under, do you think you've taken any aspects of any of them into your coaching style, either kind of deliberately or subliminally?
Yeah, I think every ex-professional will look back on the people that he's coached and take, or people that have coached him, and take little factors away from each of those. You know, if I looked at somebody like Dave Webb, taking away the importance of team spirit, you know, he was all for that. Everybody was together and everybody pulled in the same direction. And if somebody got fouled, and I know it's frowned upon these days, but everybody was around them. You know, it was the whole side. You know, if something happened in the centre circle, Dave Webb expected all the players, including the goalkeeper, being there to have each other's back. So just that team spirit and that togetherness. And then moving on to Steve Coppell, Steve was massively into fitness and stamina and strength. And again, you know, you've got to be that. I mean, Steve had a saying that, you know, eventually it will all be 6 foot plus players all to run the mile in under 4 minutes. Well, you know, maybe that's not quite right, but he certainly had a point, in fact, that how football's moved on physically, you know, because of how things have changed within the game. And then probably the most technical coach I ever had was John Lyle at Ipswich, who was fantastic. I mean, John was a tough East End man. You know, he come over as the nicest man you'd ever likely to meet on television and in his interviews. But boy, if you knew you did something wrong, John would tell you, trust me. And his way of going about things and the way he coached and the way he got his points across really struck a chord with me. And, you know, the way he set up for each game, the way he prepared. You know, I'd probably gone through my career with can't remember a massive amount of preparation on the opposition. It was generally about your own club and about what you were doing. But John had this way of letting you know what the strengths and weaknesses were of the other side, and how you could counter them strengths and how you could expose those weaknesses. So I took that with me as well. So yeah, I think out of all, you know, all the coaches that you know that I was lucky to work under, you do take little bits and pieces out of each of those, and you take them with you. And I think that's stood me in good stead, to be perfectly honest. You know, I am my own man. I always thought it's important to be your own man, and you manage and you coach the way you want to do it. And it is about man management. You can't treat everybody the same. Some people you've got to treat with kid gloves, and other people you can give a proper rollicking to. So, you know, it's been a learning process, but you're learning all the time in football. As I say, every day is a school day. You never stand still, and you know, it's one of my pet hates when somebody says it's a work in progress. Well, it's always a work in progress. Otherwise, you are standing still. Everything's a work in progress in football, because you're continually striving to move forward and to get better.
Yep. No, it makes total sense. Makes total sense. So, so 16 to 18-year-olds, if anyone wants to gain and to kind of tap into all this football knowledge and coaching knowledge that you've kind of built over the years and developed yourself, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so it's on the website. It's on the football club's website. All they have to do is contact me via my email address, which is Glenn Pennyfather at academy1sports.com. Just drop me a line, and I will get up the registration forms away to them, or we can have a chat if they want to learn more about the course or know anything different. One thing I think is probably going to change is that some of the education might well be done remotely after what we've been used to over the last sort of 12 weeks or so in regards to the virus lockdown. So, you know, that might change the face of education a little bit, and I think it might change ours as well. But it is a full-time course, so it's 5 days a week with game day on a Wednesday. But if anybody wants any more information, please ask those questions on the email. And yeah, I would look forward to meeting the lads.
Absolutely. So yeah, emailing Glenn Pennyfather at academy1sports.com, Glenn with 2 N's. And I feel like I have to say that because everyone writes my name with 2 N's. And I've only got the one, but everyone gives me 2 anyway. So, but I just want to say, Glenn, thanks very much. Great to have you back at the club. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Just want to say thanks as well for the amazing memories that yourself and Jeff gave all of the supporters at that time. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, I'm sure that having you back as part of the club will be a great trip down memory lane for lots of people, but then also a firm focus on the future and maybe some developers, some other players that can go on and have great memories with Canvey themselves. Yeah,
fantastic. Thanks, Glenn. And, you know, really looking forward to the new partnership with the football club. Delighted to be back. Delighted to be able to play a small part in hopefully developing young players. And a big thanks to John Batch, the chairman. Obviously, we've been friends for a long while, but you know, he's given us the opportunity to come in the club as well. It's a two-way thing, and you know, hopefully it'll be an equal benefit to both sides.
Brilliant. All the best, Glenn. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Glenn. Thank you.